Welcome back. My name is Darren Thomas and I am the Director of Educational Research Techniques. In this particular video, we're going to be looking at window functions and their use in SQL. So why don't we go ahead and get started. Now when we're talking about window functions, what these functions do, and there's a collection of them by the way, is they allow you to perform various analytical tasks from ranking data, separating data based on particular criteria, accumulating sums, moving averages and differences between rows. And it's really hard to understand this intuitively, but essentially what's happening is that based on whatever is in that particular row, a value is calculated in a new column based on the criteria of that row. And again, I know that doesn't make sense, so we have to go through some examples for this to really resonate with you. And so let me go ahead and show you our first example. So what we're going to do here is we're going to count the number of people, or the total number of customers, whether they're in California or Texas from the database that we're using. And so what's going to happen before I explain the code here is this. We're going to create a new column called total customers, and that is going to be the total count of people from our actual table that are from California or Texas. So in other words, in this new column, we're going to have the same number appearing over and over again. And that is what's going to be happening here. So let me just go ahead and show you the output. And you can see it down here at the bottom. I know it's kind of small, but you can see that, for example, in line number 1 here, we have 3 columns. First underscore name, last underscore name, and state. And those are the first 3 columns in our output. The last column is going to be showing up here in line number 2. And this is explaining how we made this new column called total customers, which is a count of how many people are from the customers table who are from either California or Texas. Now we're familiar with count. That's a very basic aggregation function in SQL. But what's new for us here is this over. This is what's creating our window. In other words, we're going to be doing certain things based on how much data fits inside the window, if you will. Now, because this particular function is completely empty, the entire table is the window. Now, again, that's really hard to understand right now, but what we're doing is we're saying, look at the entire table, and then I want you to count the number of people from our customers table who are from California and Texas. So the reason we have the same number every single time in our column right here is because every single time this function performs its duty, it is counting how many people are from California and Texas and inserting it into that particular row in that particular column. So let's take a look at row number 1. So the important thing for us is that this person is from Texas. Therefore, we're going to count them. We're going to include them because they're in the where here, obviously. And when we look at that particular criteria where someone's from California or Texas, we know that there are 9,903 people in this particular table who are from California or Texas. That's kind of what's going on in a nutshell. I know that's really hard to understand, but that's what we're doing. And the last thing that I did not mention is that we are ordering by customer ID. Now, I did not include that as one of the columns, which might be confusing, but basically Barbara Ann Gallet has the lowest customer ID basically. Now, what we're going to do in the next example is I'm going to show you how we normally do this here. And that is when we use the aggregation function by itself. So you can see right here that when we count the number of customers who are from either California or Texas, we get 9,903. This is normally, again, when you're a beginner, this is how you aggregate data and or how you count values or whatever. So what's happening here is that this example right here is being ran multiple times to create this new column. So every time we have someone from Texas or California, we're going to count how many people are from Texas and California and insert it in this new column called total underscore customers. That's essentially what's happening here. Now, we're going to look at another example, and that is when we're going to be working with a new command, our function, if you will, I guess is an SQL statement called partition by. Now, the majority of what you're seeing here is the same as before. The difference here is this guy inside the parentheses, partition by state. The partition by statement is very similar to the group by statement. In other words, now we're going to count people the same as last time. We're going to count customers, but the difference now is this. When my row has someone from California, I'm going to count only people from California because I'm partitioning, I'm grouping them by state. When somebody is Texas, I'm only going to count the people who are from Texas. That is what's going to be different this particular time. So let's go ahead and run this. Oops. There we go. And so now if you can see, the numbers are small, but for example, Barbara Ann, she's still from Texas, and we know that there are 4,865 people here from Texas. The next one, Gannon Barker, he's from California, and this is telling us there are 5,038 people from, did I say California or Texas? I said California, and there are 5,038 people from California. So every single time when the state the person is from changes, it's only going to count people who match that same state. That's why the numbers are different. But there's only two values. Either we get the total number of customers from Texas or from California, and that depends on whether that particular person, that row, is an individual from Texas or an individual from California. Now, the rest of the code here is all the same as last time. The only thing that is new here is this partition by. That's what's unique here. So our window here is not the entire thing as in the last example where it was blank. Now our window here is by state. The window has been shrunk into where like run this by state and tell me how many customers are from that state in this new column called total underscore customers. That is what's happening. And this is the power of the Windows functions when you have an opportunity to understand how they work. Now, I just want to show you this same code, but when we're just using it the old-fashioned way with the count by, and notice how we have to group it by state. And you can probably already see the answer. So you can see here that we have 5,038 people from California, 4,865 from Texas, and of course, when you do your math, that's going to add up to the 9,903 we had way back in the first example. So this is showing you how the partition by statement inside the over statement or function is being used to separate the data based on a particular criteria. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at a next one, our next example here. And we're going to look at how we can use the order by as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Okay, so again, most of this code is the same, but now we're using the order by. So in other words, it's going to rank them by their customer ID. But oh, there's one other thing that's new here. Now, instead of counting them, we're doing the sum. So what we're doing here is we're going to take the customer ID and we're going to add them together. That's what we're going to be doing here. So this will make sense in a second. Let's go ahead and run this. All right. So here's our example. So here's what's happening. Notice how in this first column, I have customer ID is 10 and my output is 10. Now, the reason that is happening is because the first row, you don't have anything to add to it. Now, if you look at row 2, I have the number 13. Well, 10 plus 13 equals 23. And then in row number 3, I have 15. 23 plus 15 equals 38, etc. Now, I know most of the time you're not going to add IDs like this. This is just an intellectual exercise to show you what you can do with this. But this allows you to have a running total, which may be valuable in certain situations, perhaps like finance or something, where you're dealing with numbers and accounting or whatever. And so that's an opportunity where this may be valuable. And of course, you can also calculate, moving averages, if you will. So if I put in, let's see if this will work. I'm doing this on the fly here, AVG. So it doesn't work because I believe it's text. Oh, wait, I see what the problem is. So you can see now we have the running total as an average, and of course it's going to keep getting higher and higher. So you can see how you can use these different functions or different statements and commands when you are executing code using these window functions. The key phrase, of course, right here is the over. This determines the actual window. Now, again, this window is mostly blank, but we're also telling it to sort it by customer ID. So the smallest or the lowest customer ID was first, and then it continues to grow from there. And that's how that works out. Now, I think we're just about to our last example here. And we're going to learn about how we can combine partition by with order by. And we're going to learn about a new command that we can use here called rank. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Again, the majority of this is the same. However, we do have a new one right here called rank. And this is going to rank them based on a particular criteria. And in this particular situation, we're going to rank them by customer ID. That's what we're going to rank them by. But also we're going to partition them by state. So every time the state changes, the ranking will change based on the customer ID. This is where you can see where you can do some really complicated stuff and get some really weird, interesting things, but you have to really have a clear understanding of what you want to know as you are trying to use the window function and the various tools associated with it. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Go up to the top. All right. So the first person, of course, is Barbara Ann Gallet. She's from Texas, so she's ranked number 1. She's ranked number 1 because she has the lowest or the smallest ID from the state of Texas. Now, if you look at row number 2, we have Gannon Breaker, I believe is the name. And he is also ranked number 1 because he has the lowest or the smallest ID number from the state of California. Then in row number 3, we have Nicholas Espinay. He is ranked number 2 because he has the second smallest customer ID from the state of California. And then one more example, we have here Donna Huffadine. This person is ranked number 2 because they have the second smallest customer ID number numerically, again, from the state of Texas. And then the values just keep growing from there. And the reason why the ranking keeps changing is because when the state changes, because that's what we are partitioning by, when the state changes, the rank is going to change as well. That is what's happening. And so this is just one example of the rank function. You have other ones like dense rank and I think rank percentile or something like that, where you can continue to experiment with this in your own time. And this is just showing you some of the potential and what you are able to do with the power of window functions within the context of SQL. So let's go back and summarize what we learned, and then we will conclude this video. In this particular video, we learned about the power of window functions and their use within SQL. And so what window functions do is they allow you to, based on whatever criteria is in that row, to calculate a value in a new column. And so the first one we see here that the window was the entire data set, which is why all the numbers were exactly the same. Because as long as they're from California or Texas, you're going to get the same output. As we continue to progress with this, we learned about partition by, which allows you to, based on whatever you want to separate them by or group them by, you can get the value for that. So in this one, we're partitioning by state and we're counting the customers based on what state they're from. And so now we have 2 answers because we have 2 states. In our second to last example, we began to use and to experiment with the order by. So now the window is not really changing. It's still the entire table, the entire data set, but now the order by customer ID. And we calculated 2 examples for this one, the sum, which is the running sum. So the value for the second one will be based on the first one. The value of the third row will be based on the prior 2, etc. That's how you would do the sum, and the same thing for average. And last but not least, in this example, we added another tool, the rank function, but we also partition by state and order by customer ID. So the smallest customer IDs are going to be at the top based on state, which is why we have 1s twice because these are from different states, then 2s twice because they're from different states, etc. So again, you can do a lot of really cool stuff with the window function and the associated tools with that you can explore on your own time for better understanding. So I want to thank you so much for listening and watching this particular video. My name is Darren Thomas. I am the Director of Educational Research Techniques. You have a great day and take care.